You did not arrive here by chance. The path that led you was carved not by the rational mind, but by something older, something sacred. Beneath the noise of your daily gestures, beneath the roles you wear like weathered garments, there has always been a quiet beckoning, a whisper in the marrow, calling you inward, through the veil of who you've pretended to be, toward the truth of who you are when no one else is watching. That whisper is the psyche's compass, ancient, lunar, patient, and it has finally led you to the place where forgetting ends and remembrance begins. Before we begin, take a moment to like and subscribe. The more you engage and stay with the content, the more YouTube shares these timeless insights with others. By doing so, you're not only helping this channel grow, but also spreading Carl Jung's transformative wisdom to those seeking meaning and inner truth. Let's dive into the depth of the psyche together. There is a sacred unraveling that begins the moment the empath steps out of the performance. It is not soft at first. It is not peaceful. It begins with a tremor, not in the earth beneath them, but in the fragile scaffolding of the persona. You see, the empath has long stood as the sacred listener, the silent altar for the pain of others. But this silence, so often praised as compassion, was seeded not in celebration, but in survival. They were not born with a halo of intuition, they crafted it in the fire of early instability, where knowing how to read a frown saved them more than knowing how to speak. And so the gift is not a gift, it is a scar that sings. The ability to detect the mood before the words, to sense danger in the tone, to become liquid enough to soothe the room. These were not divine inheritances, but self-protections, and now the empath begins to awaken not into light, but into rage, raw, red, ancestral. Because what they once called kindness was often capitulation. What they once named love was self-erasure dressed in silk. They had been a mirror without an edge, reflecting everyone but themselves, stretching endlessly to accommodate, to absorb, to understand all in the desperate hope that if they were pliable enough, love would not leave. But love born of contortion is not love. It is dependency masquerading as loyalty. And the soul, who has waited decades behind the curtain, begins to stir. It begins with a refusal, small, almost imperceptible, a no whispered instead of swallowed, a pause before the habitual yes, and then the dreams, not of fantasy, but of truth. Water rising to the chest, houses collapsing, roads vanishing. These are not nightmares, they are visions. The house is not just a structure, it is the persona you built to be safe. The drowning is not just fear, it is the flood of others' needs that have consumed your own. The faceless crowd chasing you, they are the identities you adopted for approval. The good daughter, the dependable friend, the peaceful partner, the one who never asks for too much. These masks become ghosts, and now they return not to haunt, but to dissolve. Because beneath them, something ancient waits the self before the adaptation. But do not be fooled, this descent is sacred. The emptiness that comes when you stop giving is not a void. It is a womb. When you have fed everyone else with your spirit and find yourself hollow, you are not broken. You are ready. Ready to be remembered, to gather the pieces that were once bartered for belonging. And it will hurt, because the empath's currency has always been sacrifice. And now they must spend in another form, truth. The world may recoil at first. You will be called selfish. You will be met with confusion. The ones who loved your silence will not applaud your roar, but roar you must. For buried beneath decades of appeasement is the sovereign voice, not polite, not smooth but primal. This is not a tantrum. This is reclamation. The first sound of awakening is not always a prayer. Sometimes it is a growl. Anger, long banished, returns not as a tyrant, but as a torch. It is the sacred fire that illuminates where you were trespassed. The empath has been trained to distrust this fire, told that their virtue lay in forgiveness, in understanding, in softness. But there is a time when understanding becomes enabling, when softness becomes self-abandonment. And in that moment, the inner warrior arrives. They do not wear armor. They do not seek battle. But they carry a sword shaped like a boundary. They stand at the threshold and say, "Enough. Enough being drained. Enough performing peace while burning inside. Enough nodding when you meant to leave." And this threshold is terrifying, because the empath has constructed their entire identity around being palatable. Peacekeeping became their form of self-worth. And now, to choose wholeness over harmony feels like betrayal. But it is not betrayal. It is rebirth. It is individuation not in theory, but in blood. The soul reclaims the fragments it once disowned, the anger, the desire, the need, the hunger. These were not flaws, they were wings clipped too early. You will grieve this awakening. You will miss the illusion, the praise, the quiet admiration for being so easy. You will miss being wanted, even if it was only for what you could give. But let me remind you, you were never meant to be a vessel for others' comfort. You were meant to be a flame not always safe, but always real. And as the empath meets their shadow, they find not a monster, but a mirror. The shadow does not shout. It waits. It says, "I am what you buried to be loved. I am the anger you were punished for. I am the need you were shamed for. I am the voice you silenced to survive. And now, I return not to ruin you, but to restore you. Do not fear the shadow. Embrace it like a long-lost sibling. Let it guide you into the places you were told to hide. Because integration is not about becoming good. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness is messy. It does not perform. It pulses. It weeps. It roars. And, most importantly, it finally breathes. So breathe now, dear empath. Not for them, for you. In this breath, you are not giving. You are not fixing. You are not translating the world's pain. You are simply existing fully, fiercely, finally. And in this sacred exhale, a question arises not from the mind, but from the soul. What is the number that speaks to you now? What number holds the weight of your boundary, the fire of your anger, the silence of your buried self? Is it 8? The number of death and rebirth, the Ouroboros coiled upon itself? Is it 1, the beginning of individuation, the sovereign I emerging from the crowd? Or is it 13, the sacred feminine, the forgotten cycle, the truth hidden beneath superstition? Choose not with logic, but with feeling. Let the number arrive like a dream strange, perfect, and meant only for you. Drop it in the comments below, not as an answer, but as a ritual, a small spell of recognition. And as you do, know this: the shadow sees you. The soul thanks you, and the self long buried beneath pleasantries rises. Fear the life you lived without it. You see, we cannot be whole without reclaiming the pieces we've disowned. And the empath's journey is not just one of compassion, but of reclamation. To remember. To call back every fragment of the soul that was offered at the altar of approval. Every time they said yes when they meant no. Every time they swallowed pain to make others comfortable. Every time they made themselves smaller to let someone else feel big. Each of these moments was a soul loss, and each of them must now be retrieved. This is not a quick process. It is not linear. The empath will grieve, not just others, but the illusion they once called love. They will mourn relationships that were built upon performance, They will outgrow circles that once felt like home. They will become lonely, not because they are unloved, but because they no longer fit the roles that kept them surrounded. And in that loneliness, something unexpected happens. Stillness. For the first time, the empath is not rushing to fix, to help, to absorb. They sit, they weep, they listen, they breathe, and they begin to hear a voice they haven't heard in years. Their own. It is quiet at first, fragile, like a child who hasn't been spoken to in decades. But it is there, and it says things the empath has forgotten. How to say, I'm tired. I don't want this. I matter. This is the return of the self. The empath begins to see not just others, but themselves. They look in the mirror and see the cost of always being kind. They notice the tightness in their chest, the weight in their gut, the tears behind their eyes. They feel again, not just for others, but for themselves. And this is the threshold moment, the shift. When the empath stops pleasing everyone, they don't become selfish, they become sovereign. Sovereignty is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is knowing where you end. And another begins. It is being generous without being exploited. It is giving from overflow, not depletion. It is no longer being the emotional landfill for the world's pain. At this stage, the empath begins to attract different energy because they are no longer vibrating at the frequency of martyrdom. They no longer call in those who feed on saviors, the narcissists, the energy vampires, the drama addicts. They fall away. And though this is painful, it is sacred. It is a clearing of the false to make room for the true. But make no mistake, this new path requires vigilance. The old self will whisper seductions. The impulse to please will return in moments of doubt. The archetype of the wounded healer is seductive, especially when it comes with praise and identity. So the empath must become a mystic, a watcher of their own soul, a guardian of their own energy. They must ask daily, am I giving from love or from lack? Am I serving from joy or obligation? Am I seen or just useful? These are not selfish questions. They are sacred boundaries, because the world does not need more burnt-out empaths. It needs awakened ones, whole ones who can say yes with joy and no without guilt, ones who can love without losing themselves, ones who can feel without being consumed. You must now understand your sensitivity is not your identity. It is your instrument. And like any instrument, it must be tuned, protected, respected. You are not here to carry the world. You are here to feel it and then choose what to carry. You are not here to disappear for others' comfort. You are here to radiate your presence so fully that others remember their own. The empath who stops pleasing and starts seeing becomes something new. They become medicine. And now that you have tasted the medicine of truth, I must warn you, it will not let you return to ignorance. Once the veil has been lifted, once the psychic eye has opened and glimpsed its own reflection in the mirror of darkness, it cannot be sewn shut again. The empaths now initiated find themselves in a sacred tension between what they used to be and who they are becoming. This is the liminal space, the psychic hallway between the house of false belonging and the temple of authentic being. It is uncomfortable. The old roles no longer fit, and the new ones have yet to be embodied. You no longer desire to be the silent comforter, but you do not yet know how to speak your full truth without shaking. This is the stage the alchemists call the negredo, the blackening, the psychic decomposition of the persona. So the soul may be reconstituted in wholeness. Do not mistake this disorientation for failure. It is transformation. In this stage, dreams will intensify. You may see images of crumbling walls, bleeding hands, serpents shedding their skin. These are not random symbols. They are psychic instructions. So wall crumbling is your old structure of identity dissolving. The bleeding hand is the pain of letting go of control. The snake is the archetype of transmutation. The old self dying so the new can live. You are being reborn through the death of illusion. But let me be clear, you will be tested. The archetype of the pleaser does not fade quietly. It will whisper its temptations in the voice of moral superiority. It says, even if it hurts, don't be selfish. It warns, they need you. It's your job to keep the peace. These are not virtues. These are weapons used by the unconscious to chain you to the cycle of soul extraction. Every time you betray your truth to make others comfortable, you abandon your own self at the altar of their expectation. And this abandonment has consequences, not just psychological, but energetic. Your body begins to speak. Anxiety becomes chronic. Your skin erupts. Your digestion ripples. Fatigue becomes your default. These are not medical mysteries. They are energetic protests. Your nervous system is tired of being hyper-attuned to everyone but you. Your immune system, constantly activated by emotional overstimulation, begins to falter. This is a psychic pill the body presents after years of people-pleasing. But when you stop this pattern, when you dare to reclaim your energy, the body begins to heal. Slowly, subtly, the breath deepens, the jaw unclenches, the spine straightens. You begin to inhabit your body again, as if returning to a sacred temple, long left abandoned. You eat differently. You speak differently. You walk into rooms not to be liked, but to be real. And this frightens people because you are no longer their projection. When the empath pleases everyone, they become a psychic screen onto which others cast their needs, wounds and fantasies. You became the nice one, the reliable one, the easy one. But when you remove that screen and stand in your sovereignty, people can no longer use you to avoid themselves. They may grow resentful. They may accuse you of changing. They may say you're cold, distant, selfish. Do not internalize their discomfort. It is theirs to hold, not yours to carry. You are not responsible for others' reactions to your boundaries. You are only responsible for your integrity, and this is where the true transformation deepens, not in the setting of boundaries alone, but in the ability to hold them with compassion and consistency, even in the face of guilt, manipulation, or abandonment. Let us now descend even deeper into the archetypal core of this metamorphosis. There exists, within every empath, a forgotten figure, the wild self. This is not the soft, intuitive empath most people recognize. No, this is the untamed, unapologetic, fully embodied essence that existed before domestication, before guilt was introduced, before love became a transaction. The wild self does not please. It pulses with primal knowing. It feels deeply, but is not ruled by others' wounds. It does not ask for permission to exist. It simply is to awaken this part of yourself. You must pass through the labyrinth of emotional ancestral inheritance. You must ask, who taught me that love must be earned? Whose approval did I beg for as a child? Who benefited from my silence, my compliance, my false light? These are not merely biographical questions. They are mythic, because in confronting them, you are not just healing your story. You are dismantling generations of psychic inheritance. You are ending the spell cast upon the feminine and the sensitive for centuries, that your worth is measured by how much of yourself you give away. This awakening is revolutionary. It is no longer enough to be nice. Niceness is often a performance. It is compliance dressed in politeness. It is silence masquerading as virtue. What the world needs now is not niceness. It is fierce empathy rooted in truth. Empathy that includes yourself. Empathy that is boundaried. Empathy that says, I feel you, but I will not abandon me. Can you feel the gravity of this shift when the empath stops pleasing? They become a mirror, not of others' projections, but of others' shadows. Your refusal to self-abandon will expose their tendency to exploit. Your boundary will trigger their guilt. Your clarity will unearth their chaos. And so many will retreat not because you are wrong, but because they are unprepared to meet themselves in your reflection. But the few who stay are. These are your true companions. They will not just take, they will see you, honor you, reciprocate. Relationships once marked by imbalance will either collapse or evolve. The ones who truly love you will adapt. The ones who only needed you will depart. This is not loss. This is sorting. And in the quiet aftermath, you will finally hear the frequency of your soul, not the static of others' needs, not the noise of their demands. Just you, your essence, your ism, your desire. This is what it means to see the truth. You no longer mistake attachment for love. You no longer confuse intensity for connection. You recognize manipulation dressed as dependence. You feel the difference between genuine intimacy and emotional extraction. You see it in the eyes, in their energy, in the silence. You have become the one who sees. And this vision extends beyond the personal. The empath who stops pleasing becomes a vessel for collective healing. Because now, when you give, it is not from emptiness, it is from alignment. When you help, it is not out of fear, it is from choice. When you serve, it is not for love, it is from love. This is sacred service, and it has power. Your aura changes. You no longer draw in the wounded who seek to siphon your light. You begin to attract those who carry their own light, those who meet you eye to eye, soul to soul. The frequency of your life elevates not through striving, but through shedding. You lose the approval of many and gain the truth of yourself. Do you understand now why this path is not for the faint of heart, why most empaths remain trapped in the cycle of pleasing? Because to break free, one must confront everything they thought love was. One must be willing to be misunderstood, rejected, even alone for a while. But in that solitude, the soul begins to bloom. You were never meant to be everyone's balm. You were meant to become your own medicine, and from that healed wholeness, radiate a light that reminds others of their own, not by saving them, not by fixing them, but by being so fully yourself that they remember how to come home to themselves. This is the empath. Evolve it. This is you becoming. The path you walk now is not upward, but inward, downward, into the fertile dark, where truth is not an idea, but an experience. You are no longer here to be liked. You are here to be home. And this frightens the part of you still addicted to being chosen. Yes, addiction. We must name it honestly. People-pleasing is not simply a trait. It is an addiction to validation, a psychic compulsion to merge, to fix, to smooth the edges of conflict, not because you are good, but because you are afraid. Afraid that without your usefulness, you are unworthy. Afraid that without your performance, you will be discarded. This is the wound of abandonment wrapped in the costume of kindness. But beneath that costume, something stirs, a deeper self, one that does not beg to belong, but already knows it does, not to others, but to existence itself. You were not born to fulfill others' unfinished emotional homework. You were not created to be an extension of someone else's unresolved inner child. You are a sovereign psyche, a unique configuration of archetypal intelligence, and your life belongs to you. The moment you realize this, not intellectually, but somatically, is the moment you reclaim your psychic throne. And do you know what happens when the empath sits on their own throne? The dynamic reverses. No longer do they orbit around others' needs. Others begin to revolve around the gravitational pull of their presence. Not because they manipulate, but because authenticity has a resonance. When you stop leaking your energy through unconscious giving, it becomes condensed, radiant, magnetic. You don't speak louder. You simply speak from within. And that, my friend, is power. Not dominance, but power rooted in alignment. This is the moment when you begin to understand what the mystics meant by inner marriage. The sacred union of the anima and animos within the masculine and feminine aspects of your psyche. The doing and the being. The giving and the receiving. You are no longer fragmented, no longer seeking the missing half in the external world. Because you have begun the long, holy work of integration. And with integration comes discernment. You begin to see with startling clarity the games others play, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. You see the subtle guilt trips, the backhanded compliments, the covert contracts disguised as love. You no longer absorb them as personal. You witness them with the detachment of one who has seen behind the curtain. You say to yourself, I remember when I played that role too, when I traded my truth for acceptance. But you do not judge. You simply do not join. This refusal to participate in unconscious dynamics is not cruelty. It is compassion rooted in clarity. You give others the dignity of their own process. You no longer interfere. You no longer rescue. You hold space but not responsibility for their choices. And this, perhaps, is the most painful initiation of all, for the empath. The realization that healing others is not your job. Let me say that again. Slowly, so your nervous system can absorb it. Healing others is not your job. It was never your job. It was your identity. It was your escape. It was your survival strategy. But it was never your destiny. You were not placed on this earth to be consumed. You were placed here to become conscious. And through your consciousness, others may remember their own. But that is their journey, not your task. As this truth settles into your bones, your energy begins to shift. It no longer rushes outward in endless streams of overextension. It pools inward, like water returning to a well. You begin to feel full for the first time in your life, not from praise, not from service, but from presence. And in this fullness, you begin to create. You write, you paint, you speak, you dance, you dream. Your soul, once muffled by the noise of others' needs, begins to sing again. Not because you are finally free, but because you finally chose to be. You will notice something beautiful here. You will notice that when you leave from this place, the right people find you. Not because you are performing, but because you are vibrating. Authenticity is the ultimate beacon. It cuts through the static of codependency and draws those who are ready to meet you as you are. And those who are not will fall away. This is a pruning of your psychic garden. Some connections will rot, others will bloom, some will ghost, some will grow. Let them trust the intelligence of your transformation. Not everyone is meant to walk with you beyond this threshold. Some relationships were only ever meant to mirror the unhealed version of you. And now that you are healing, they no longer recognize you. Do not mourn this too deeply. Bless them, thank them, and continue forward, because what awaits you now is not just self-knowledge, but self-embodiment. You are not here to simply understand your wounds. You are here to transmute them into wisdom, into art, into sacred service. You become what I once called a wounded healer, but with a crucial difference. You are not healing others to escape your pain. You are offering from the overflow of your wholeness. This is not martyrdom. It is mastery. You now move through the world differently. You are not afraid of saying no. You are not afraid of silence. You are not afraid of losing people, because you are no longer afraid of losing yourself. This is the empath reborn. No longer the sponge, no longer the servant, no longer the secret sufferer, but a sovereign being who chooses connection without compulsion, who gives without depletion, who loves without losing themselves. You may still feel deeply, but you no longer drown. You may still care, but you no longer carry what was never yours. You may still help, but only when help is sacred, not self-sacrifice. And in this new way of being, you become an embodiment of a deeper archetype. Not the empath, but the oracle, the one who feels not to please, but to perceive, the one who serves not to be loved, but because they are love, the one who has walked through the fires of self-erasure and emerged glowing with discernment, with vision, with power. The empath who stops pleasing and starts seeing does not lose their light. They finally learn how to aim it. And now, beloved soul, we arrive at the deepest threshold of your transformation, the integration of the empath who no longer pleases, but sees not just with the eyes, not merely with the heart, but with the full intelligence of the psyche forged through shadow and flame. At this stage, a new paradox begins to unfold, one that only the awakened can hold. You begin to realize that while your suffering was not your fault, your healing is your responsibility. You do not cast blame upon the past, but you also no longer deny its imprint upon your nervous system, your behaviors, your relationships. You become the observer and the participant in your story, both witness and warrior. The empath, once fragmented by trauma and self-forgetting, begins to become whole, not by rejecting their sensitivity, but by reclaiming its purpose. You now see your gift for what it truly is, not a tool of survival, but a compass for truth. The world may still misunderstand you. They may still call you too much, too intense, too sensitive, too emotional. But now those words no longer pierce, they inform. Because what they are really saying is, you feel things I cannot bear to feel. You speak truths I have not yet made peace with. You mirror parts of me I have yet to love. This, my friend, is the final burden and blessing of the vacant empath. To be a mirror so clear, it unnerves the unconscious. But you no longer shatter at their rejection. You bow in silent grace. For you know now that not all will meet you where you are going, and that is no longer your grief to carry. You were never meant to dilute yourself for the comfort of others. You are meant to be the elixir that wakes them if they are ready. And if they are not, you continue walking not in resentment, but in reverence for your own path. This is what individuation means. This is what I dedicated my life to exploring. The process of becoming the self, not the persona, not the role, but the undivided totality of your being, light and shadow, instinct and spirit, rage and reverence. You are no longer an empath who needs to be needed. You are a sovereign soul who chooses to feel. You are no longer bound to the psychic chains of codependent love, for you have tasted the medicine of your own presence, and you will never forget its flavor again. Now, you walk differently. You enter rooms with your energy intact. You do not scan the space to read the emotional weather. You anchor into your own atmosphere and let others adjust. You do not rush to fix, to soothe, to sacrifice. You allow others to meet their own pain. You trust the intelligence of their souls to guide them. You no longer mistake discomfort for danger. You have built safety within your nervous system, once coiled like a spring from years of internal hypervigilance, begins to unwind breath by breath. You return to yourself. You laugh more. You say no faster. You ask for what you need without apologizing. You stop explaining your boundaries. You let the silence after them speak for itself. And you begin to attract what matches your vibration, not your wound. This is perhaps the greatest miracle of all. The people who arrive now do not want the version of you that bends, contorts, sacrifices. They want the real, the rooted, the radiant, the one who can love without leaking, the one who can give without grasping, the one who can feel without drowning, the one who knows that love is not earned through pain, but revealed through presence. And when you meet these souls, these mirrors, these companions, you recognize them not by the excitement in your chest, but by the calm in your body. There is no anxiety in real connection, only expansion, only depth, only recognition. And still the work continues, because wholeness is not a destination, it is a practice. You will still be tempted. Old rules will call you like ghosts in the night. You may find yourself nodding when you want to shake your head, offering when you wish to rest, apologizing for simply existing. But now you catch yourself, not with shame, but with curiosity. You ask who in me is speaking right now. The inner child who fears abandonment, the inner savior who wants to be loved, the shadow who craves approval. You do not exile these parts. You invite them into the circle of awareness. You breathe with them. You honor their story. And you remind them gently but firmly, we do not need to do this anymore. We are safe now. We are seen now. We belong to ourselves. This is the true liberation of the empaths, not the eradication of their sensitivity, but the emancipation of their identity from it. You are more than what you feel. You are the one who watches the feeling, shapes it, channels it. You are the vessel, not the water, the bridge, not the burden. And in this place of deep remembrance, the empaths become something holy. They become a psychic anchor in a world of chaos. They hold stillness in a world of performance. They offer truth. In a world addicted to noise, they bring silence that heals. Their mere presence disrupts the unconscious dance of dysfunction, not through confrontation, but through calibration. Others begin to regulate in their presence, not because they fix them, but because they no longer abandon themselves to soothe them, this energetic mastery. This is the empath ascended, and so to you, the one who has felt too much, given too much, lost too much. I offer this closing invocation. You are not broken, you are breaking open. You are not too sensitive. You are exquisitely attuned. You are not here to carry the world. You are here to embody your own walk on. Speak true, love wisely, and please, above all else, never again abandon yourself to be loved. The soul you betray when you please everyone is your own, and the soul you recover when you begin to see, that soul is divine. That soul is you.